The alarm screamed through the corridors of the soft dawn, and Taman knew they were going to die. He floated in the low gravity of the command deck, his long fingers trembling as they moved across the control panel. The Velen ambassador had lived for 200 cycles, had negotiated peace treaties across 17 systems, and had never once felt true fear. Not until today. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7, Minji reported from her station. The young aide's voice stayed calm, but Taman could see the blue tint spreading across her skin. Fear coloring. All Velens showed it when death came close. Life support failing in the medical bay. We have maybe 3 days of air left. Through the viewport, Taman could see the raider ships circling like the predators from the old stories. 6 vessels, each one bristling with weapons that the Concordance had banned centuries ago. The raiders didn't follow the rules. They took what they wanted from diplomatic ships, science vessels, anyone weak enough to prey upon. Send the distress signal again, Taman said. Boost the power. The Concordance peacekeepers must hear us. Minji's fingers danced across her console. The distress signal pulsed out into the void, carrying their coordinates, their situation, their desperate plea for help. Standard Concordance protocol said rescue would arrive within 48 hours. They had procedures for everything. Forms to file, channels to follow. Taman watched the raiders move closer and wondered if procedures would matter when they had no air left to breathe. The soft dawn had been traveling from the Velen homeworld to the Concordance Central Station, carrying important documents and cultural artifacts. It should have been safe. The treaties protected diplomatic vessels, but the raiders didn't care about treaties. They had appeared from nowhere, their weapons tearing through the soft dawn shields like they were made of paper. Ambassador, one of the crew members called from across the deck. They're hailing us. Taman activated the communication channel. A harsh voice filled the command deck, speaking in broken galactic common. Velen ship. You will prepare for boarding. We take your cargo. You not resist, maybe you live. You resist, you die fast. Choose now. The channel cut off before Taman could respond. What do we do? Minji asked. Her blue fear coloring had spread to her neck now. We have no weapons, no defense systems. We're a diplomatic vessel. That was the Velen way, the Concordance way. They had evolved beyond violence, beyond the barbaric need for weapons and warfare. They settled disputes with words, with logic, with careful negotiation. It had worked for thousands of cycles. It wasn't working now. We wait for rescue, Taman said, trying to sound confident. The Concordance will send peacekeepers. They'll negotiate our release. It's protocol. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The peacekeepers would take days to arrive. Days to assess the situation. Days to form a committee and decide on the proper response. The Concordance moved with careful deliberation. They didn't rush. They didn't take risks. The raiders would board them long before any help arrived. Hours crawled past. The soft dawn continued to leak air, to lose power, to die slowly in the cold of space. Taman tried to keep the crew calm, but fear spread through the ship like a disease. Some crew members huddled in their quarters. Others gathered in the common areas, sharing memories of home. Minji stayed at her station, monitoring the distress signal, hoping for any response from Concordance space. Ambassador, she said suddenly. I'm picking up something, a ship. Single vessel, heading directly toward us at high speed. Taman felt hope bloom in his chest. Concordance peacekeepers? Minji's fingers moved across her console, pulling up the sensor data. The hope died when he saw her expression change. The blue of fear darkened to something close to purple. No, she whispered. The signature. It's from the quarantine zone. From the forbidden systems. Taman pulled up the data on his own screen and felt his blood run cold. The ship approaching them came from a region of space that the Concordance had marked with warning beacons. A spiral arm where a single planet orbited a yellow star. A planet the survey teams had labeled as Class 12 Deathworld. Earth. Everyone in the Concordance knew the stories. A planet where everything tried to kill you, where the gravity crushed, where the atmosphere corroded, where the weather could destroy cities, and the creatures that evolved there, the humans, were the most dangerous of all, predators who had climbed to the top of their world's food chain through violence and cunning. The Concordance had made contact with them 30 cycles ago and immediately established a quarantine. Too dangerous, the Council had declared. Too unpredictable, too violent. Humans were to be contained in their own system, warned away from civilized space. But humans, Taman had heard, didn't follow warnings very well. Should we try to wave them off? Minji asked. Tell them we don't need assistance? Before Taman could answer, the raider ships began to move. They had detected the approaching vessel too. 6 raider ships turned to face the single human craft, weapons charging. Through the viewport, Taman watched the human ship come into view. It was ugly. That was his first thought. Where Concordance vessels were smooth and elegant, designed for efficiency and beauty, the human ship looked like someone had welded scrap metal together in a junkyard. Asymmetric armor plates covered its hull. Weapons pods jutted out at odd angles. Scorch marks and hull patches told stories of previous battles. The ship was called the Broken Chain, according to the identification signal it was broadcasting. And it was heading straight into the middle of the raider fleet. They're going to die, Minji said. 1 ship against 6? Even humans can't be that foolish. But the Broken Chain didn't slow down. It accelerated, pushing speeds that should have torn a ship that size apart. The raiders opened fire, plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filling the space between vessels. The human ship dodged, not with the careful, calculated movements of Concordance ships, but with wild, impossible maneuvers that defied everything Taman knew about physics and engineering. It rolled, dove, spun through the weapons fire like it was dancing. Then it fired back. The weapons the humans used were nothing like the regulated arms of Concordance peacekeepers. These were brutal, efficient, designed for one purpose: destruction. Railguns that punched through shields, missiles that tracked their targets with ruthless precision, energy weapons that didn't stun or disable but killed. 1 raider ship exploded, then another. The remaining 4 scattered, trying to escape, but the Broken Chain hunted them down with terrifying efficiency. Within minutes, the battle was over. The raider ships were destroyed or fleeing, and the human vessel was approaching the soft dawn. They're hailing us, Minji said, her voice barely a whisper. Taman activated the channel with shaking hands. A face appeared on the screen. Human, male, with short dark hair and eyes that looked like they had seen too many battles. His skin was darker than any Velen's, weathered and scarred. He wore a jacket that had been patched so many times it was hard to tell what the original material had been. This is Captain Dong-Yun of the Broken Chain, the human said. His voice was rough, direct. No formal greetings, no diplomatic niceties. We picked up your distress call. Looks like you folks need some help. We're coming aboard. Don't shoot us. The channel cut off before Taman could explain that they had no weapons to shoot with. What do we do? Minji asked. Taman looked at the approaching human ship, at his dying vessel, at his terrified crew. They had called for help. Something had answered. He just wasn't sure if their rescuers were any less dangerous than the raiders had been. We prepare to receive guests, he said quietly. And we pray that the Concordance was wrong about humans, because right now they're the only hope we have. The sound of metal cutting through metal echoed through the soft dawn, and every Velen on board flinched at the noise. Taman stood in the docking bay with Minji and 3 other crew members, watching as the human ship attached itself to their hull. The Broken Chain had simply clamped onto their vessel without asking permission, without following any docking protocols. The humans were coming aboard whether the Velens wanted them to or not. Remember, Taman said to his crew, keeping his voice steady. They answered our distress call. They saved us from the raiders. They are here to help. He repeated this to himself as much as to them. He needed to believe it. The airlock door hissed open and the first human stepped through. Minji gasped. 2 crew members took steps backward. Taman forced himself to stand still, to not show fear, even as every instinct screamed at him to run. The human was tall, impossibly tall. Even in the low gravity that Velens preferred, he moved with ease. His muscles adapted to a world where gravity was 3 times stronger. He wore heavy boots that clanged against the deck, and Taman realized the human was actually trying to walk gently. This was Captain Dong-Yun, the man from the transmission. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Scars marked his face and hands. His eyes scanned the docking bay with the alertness of a predator. He carried tools on his belt that could probably be used as weapons. Everything about him screamed danger, but when he saw the Velens, his expression softened slightly. Ambassador Taman? His voice was gentler than it had been on the transmission. I'm Dong-Yun. This is my crew. 4 more humans entered the docking bay. Each one was as intimidating as their captain, moving with the casual grace of beings who could probably tear a Velen apart with their bare hands if they wanted to. A woman with sharp eyes and tied-back hair stepped forward. "I'm G1 Combat Medic. I need to check your crew for injuries. Your distress call said you had wounded." Combat Medic. The term itself was strange to Velen ears. They had healers, gentle beings trained in the careful art of medicine. The idea of combining medical care with combat seemed contradictory. "Yes," Taman managed. "In the medical bay. 3 crew members injured when the hull breached, but our healers have been treating them according to proper medical protocols." G1 was already moving past him, not waiting for permission or directions. Another human, a stocky man with calloused hands, was examining the damaged wall of the docking bay. "Hyun-woo," Captain Dong-hyun called. "How bad is it?" The man Hyun-woo pressed his hand against the wall and frowned. "Bad. Hull integrity is compromised in multiple sections. Life support is failing. They've got maybe 2 days of air left, not 3 like their systems are telling them." He said this casually, like he was commenting on the weather. Taman felt his chest tighten. 2 days. They had even less time than they thought. "Can you fix it?" Dong-hyun asked. Hyun-woo grinned. "Can I fix it? Captain, please. I can fix anything. It won't be pretty, and it definitely won't meet concordant safety standards, but I'll get their life support running again." Without waiting for approval, Hyun-woo pulled a tool from his belt and began removing a wall panel. Taman watched in horror as the human simply started taking apart his ship. "Wait," Taman said. "You can't just—" "There are procedures, safety protocols. You need to file a repair plan and have it approved by the ship's engineering committee." Hyun-woo paused and looked at Taman with confusion. "Your ship is dying. You want me to write a report first?" "It's proper procedure," Minji said weakly from behind Taman. The humans exchanged glances. A young woman with alert eyes who had been studying the docking bay layout spoke up. "Ambassador, with respect, your procedures are going to get you killed. Hyun-woo knows what he's doing. Let him work." This was Sora, Taman guessed. The navigator. She had the bearing of someone who was always 3 steps ahead, always calculating. Captain Dong-hyun stepped closer to Taman. The ambassador had to tilt his head back to look the human in the eyes. "I know this is scary for you," Dong-hyun said quietly. "We look dangerous. We move fast. We don't follow your rules, but right now your rules aren't keeping you alive. Let us help, please." There was something in the captain's eyes, not cruelty or violence, but genuine concern. This human, this supposed Deathworlder, actually cared about whether Taman and his crew lived or died. "All right," Taman said. "Do what you need to do." What followed was controlled chaos. Hyun-woo tore through the ship like a force of nature, ripping out damaged systems and replacing them with parts from the broken chain. He didn't follow any engineering manual that Taman had ever seen. He improvised, adapted, made solutions that should not have worked but somehow did. He sang while he worked, old human songs that sounded both sad and hopeful at the same time. Ji-won found the injured crew members and immediately started treating them in ways that made the Velen healers protest. She used injections instead of gentle absorption patches. She physically set a broken bone, causing the patient to cry out in pain, when the proper procedure was to wait for the bone to naturally realign over several days. "I know it hurts," Ji-won said to the injured Velen, her voice surprisingly gentle, "but this way you'll heal in days instead of weeks. Trust me." The injured crew member looked terrified, but after the initial pain faded, he admitted he felt better than he had since the accident. Sora moved through the ship with a data pad, mapping the damage, calculating what could be saved and what needed to be abandoned. She moved with efficiency, never wasting a single motion. When she found 2 crew members trapped behind a collapsed bulkhead, she didn't call for help or file an emergency report. She simply picked up a piece of fallen metal beam and used it as a lever, her Deathworlder strength making it look easy. The trapped Velens stared at her in shock as she pulled them free. "You're safe now," Sora said, then moved on to check the next section. Captain Dong-hyun coordinated everything, moving between his crew members and the Velens, making sure everyone understood what was happening. He explained each repair in simple terms, made sure the Velens felt included in the decisions about their own ship. Taman followed him, watching, learning. The captain carried a weapon on his hip, some kind of projectile device that the Concordants would consider barbaric, but he never touched it around the Velens. He kept his movements slow and non-threatening. He smiled when he talked to frightened crew members, making jokes that were probably not very funny but helped ease the tension. "Why are you doing this?" Taman asked during a quiet moment. The Concordance quarantined your people. We fear you. We want nothing to do with Earth. Why help us? Donghyun looked at him with surprise. Because you needed help. What other reason do we need? But we've done nothing for you. We can't repay you, and our government has been hostile to yours. The captain shrugged. Doesn't matter. You sent out a distress call. We heard it. That's enough. That's not logical, Taman said. Probably not, Donghyun agreed. But it's human. Hours passed. The human crew worked without stopping, without complaining about fatigue or hunger. Taman learned that humans could function for long periods without rest. Another adaptation from their death world. They simply kept going until the job was done. Minji spent time with Jiwon in the medical bay, watching the human woman work. You're very good at this, Minji said carefully. How did you learn to heal so quickly? Jiwon didn't look up from the patient she was treating. Necessity. On Earth, if you don't learn to patch people up fast, they die. We don't have the luxury of slow, gentle medicine when someone's bleeding out. It must be terrible, Minji said. Living on a world so dangerous. For the first time, Jiwon smiled. It has its moments, but it also teaches you what's important. Community. Helping each other. No one survives Earth alone. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Hyunwoo was explaining his repairs to the Velen engineering team. They looked horrified at his methods, but couldn't argue with the results. The life support systems were running again, stronger than before. This violates at least 17 safety regulations, one engineer said. Probably, Hyunwoo agreed cheerfully. But you're breathing, aren't you? Sometimes good enough is better than perfect if perfect takes too long. On the command deck, Sora was showing the navigation crew how to plot faster routes through dangerous space. The Concordance teaches you to avoid all risks, she explained. But sometimes the fastest way home is through the dangerous path, not around it. You just need to know what risks are worth taking. As the ship slowly came back to life, Taman found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about humans. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they were violent. But they were also kind, efficient, willing to help strangers for no reward. They were Deathworlders, but maybe that wasn't the same as monsters. We're done here, Captain Donghyun announced. Your ship will hold until you reach the nearest Concordance station. We've reinforced the hull and upgraded your life support. You should be good for at least a month. Thank you, Taman said, and meant it. How can we repay you? Donghyun waved the question away. No payment needed. Just doing what anyone should do. Help when help is needed. As the humans prepared to return to their ship, Minji pulled Taman aside. Ambassador, I've been monitoring communications. There's another distress call. A Concordance science vessel under attack 2 systems away. The peacekeepers are responding, but they're days away. Taman looked at Captain Donghyun, who was listening to the same transmission on his own equipment. The human's expression was serious. That's on our way, Sora said quietly. Donghyun nodded. Change course. We'll check it out. But, Taman said, confused. That's a Concordance vessel. The same Concordance that quarantined your people. Why would you help them? The captain looked at him like the answer was obvious. Because they need help. That's how this works. And Taman began to understand what it meant when humans said they followed a code. The Soft Dawn traveled alongside the broken chain for 3 weeks, and Taman learned more about humans than the Concordance had discovered in 30 cycles of observation. The journey to the nearest Concordance station should have been tense and uncomfortable, but the humans made it almost pleasant. They checked on the Velen ship regularly, making sure the repairs were holding. They answered questions. They even shared meals, though Taman quickly learned that human food was not meant for Velen digestion. Try this, Hyunwoo had said on the 3rd day, offering Taman a small portion of what humans called stew. It's mild, barely any spice. Taman had taken one careful bite and felt like his mouth was on fire. The mild human food contained enough capsaicin to be classified as a chemical weapon by Concordance standards. He had spent the next hour drinking water while Hyunwoo apologized repeatedly. I forget that you folks have different tolerance levels, the engineer said, looking genuinely sorry. On Earth, we eat stuff like this to build up our immune systems. The spice kills bacteria. Your food fights bacteria? Minji asked, fascinated and horrified. Everything on Earth tries to kill you, Hyunwoo explained cheerfully, even our food. So we make it try to kill us a little bit first, you know. Builds character. This, Taman was learning, was very human. They took something dangerous and made it part of their daily life. They didn't avoid risk. They managed it. Minji had taken to interviewing the human crew whenever she could. She recorded their stories, their history, trying to understand these people who the Concordance had labeled as too dangerous to contact. "Tell me about Earth," she asked Jiwon one afternoon. They sat in the medical bay of the broken chain, which was surprisingly clean despite the rough appearance of the rest of the ship. Jiwon smiled, the kind of smile people get when talking about home. "Earth is beautiful. Dangerous, yes, but beautiful. We have mountains that touch the sky, oceans so deep we still haven't explored all of them. Weather that can destroy cities in hours." "That sounds terrifying," Minji said. "It is," Jiwon agreed, "but it's also home. You learn to respect the planet. You learn to work together because no one survives alone. My grandmother used to say that Earth made us strong not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. It never pretended to be safe." "Is that why humans are so direct?" Minji asked carefully. "You don't follow protocols. You just act." Jiwon thought about this. "I think it's because we learned that hesitation can kill you. If a storm is coming, you don't form a committee to discuss whether to seek shelter. You move, you act. You save who you can and mourn who you can't." The human woman's eyes grew distant for a moment. "I grew up in a coastal city. When I was young, a tsunami hit. The warning systems gave us 20 minutes. My father didn't waste time with procedures. He grabbed my brother and me and we ran. Some of our neighbors stopped to gather belongings to follow evacuation protocols. They died, we lived. That taught me something about the value of decisive action." Minji recorded this, her fingers trembling slightly. The Concordance had no concept of natural disasters on that scale. Their homeworlds were chosen for stability, for safety. They engineered away danger. Humans had evolved with it. Taemin spent time with Captain Dong-yun learning about the broken chain and its crew. The ship, he discovered, was a salvage vessel. The crew made their living rescuing other ships, recovering lost cargo, and answering distress calls in dangerous regions of space. When the Concordance put up their quarantine, Dong-hyun explained, we figured that was fine. We'd explore our own region of space, but then we started picking up distress signals from beyond the quarantine zone. Ships in trouble, people dying, and the Concordance wasn't responding fast enough, if at all. "So you broke the quarantine?" Taemin asked. "We crossed it," Dong-hyun corrected. "There's a difference. We're not invading Concordance space. We're just helping people who need help. We started calling it the Deathworlders code. If someone sends a distress call, you answer, period. Doesn't matter who they are or what government they belong to." "But you gain nothing from this," Taemin said. "We can't pay you. Most species fear you. Why do it?" Dong-hyun was quiet for a long moment. "My grandfather was a rescue worker on Earth. He pulled people out of collapsed buildings after earthquakes. Dangerous work, low pay. People asked him the same question. You know what he said?" Taemin shook his head. He said that being able to help someone and choosing not to would haunt him more than any danger ever could. "I guess that's genetic," the captain smiled. "We humans are stubborn that way. We can't stand watching someone suffer when we could do something about it." The Velans also learned about human recreation, which was almost as dangerous as their rescue work. The crew of the broken chain exercised in a gravity chamber set to Earth normal, which would have crushed a Velan in seconds. They practiced combat drills, moving through simulated battles with weapons that made Concordant security forces look like children with toys. But they also played games, sang songs, told jokes. Sora taught Minji a human card game that involved bluffing and reading opponents' expressions. Hyunwoo showed the Velan engineers magic tricks, sleight of hand that delighted them even when they knew it was just illusion. "You're very complex," Taemin observed to Dong-hyun one evening. "Warriors and healers, dangerous and kind. The Concordance doesn't know what to make of you." "To be fair," Dong-hyun said, "we don't always know what to make of ourselves either. Humans are contradictory. We're capable of terrible violence and incredible compassion, sometimes in the same person on the same day. I think that's what scares your people. You like things to be predictable." "Predictable is safe," Taemin said. "Maybe," Dong-hyun agreed. "But safe isn't always right. And predictable can be slow." On the 18th day of their journey, they received another distress call. A Concordant science vessel called the Gentle Inquiry was under attack by raiders. The same raider fleet that had attacked the Soft Dawn, grown bold after their escape from the broken chain. Taman listened to the distress call with growing dread. "The Concordance peacekeepers are responding," he said, checking the communications. "They'll arrive in 48 hours. "The message says the science vessel has maybe 12 hours of air left," Sora reported from the navigation station. "The raiders are systematically destroying their life support. 48 hours to respond to a 12-hour emergency. This was the Concordance way. Careful, measured, following proper procedure even when those procedures meant people would die. We're 4 hours away," Hyunwoo said quietly. "If we push the engines." Taman looked at Captain Dong-yun, expecting to see hesitation. This was a Concordance vessel. The same Concordance that had quarantined Earth. The same Concordance that still refused to officially recognize human ships or crews. The humans had every reason to let the peacekeepers handle this. Instead, Dong-yun was already moving toward the command chair. "Sora, plot the fastest course. Hyunwoo, get the engines ready for a hard burn. Jiwon, prep medical for incoming wounded." "You're going to help them," Taman said. It wasn't a question. "Of course we are," Dong-yun said like there was no other option. "They need help. But they're Concordance. They fear you. They've kept you isolated for 3 decades. Dong-hyun looked at him with those calm, certain eyes. "That's their problem, not ours. Our problem is that there are people dying who we can save. Everything else is just politics." Minji stepped forward. "Captain, the peacekeepers have sent a message. They're ordering you to stand down. They say this is Concordance jurisdiction and human intervention is not authorized." "Are they going to get there in time?" Dong-yun asked. Minji checked her console. "No. The science vessel will be out of air long before the peacekeepers arrive." "Then they can complain about our intervention later," Dong-yun said. "After everyone's still alive to hear it. Sora, get us moving." The broken chain accelerated and the Soft Dawn followed. Taman had ordered his crew to accompany the humans, though he wasn't sure why. His ship wasn't armed. His people couldn't fight. They would be useless in a battle. But somehow, leaving the humans to face danger alone felt wrong. As they traveled toward the besieged science vessel, Taman watched the human crew prepare for combat. They moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons, reviewing tactics, coordinating strategies. But there was no excitement in their actions. No bloodlust or eagerness for violence. They looked like people preparing to do a necessary but unpleasant job. "Are you afraid?" Taman asked Jiwon as she checked her medical supplies. The human woman paused. "Always. Only idiots aren't afraid before combat. But fear is just information. It tells you to be careful, to be smart. It doesn't tell you not to act." "The Concordance teaches us that fear should make us cautious," Taman said. "That it should slow us down, make us think through every option." "That works when you have time," Jiwon said. "But those scientists don't have time. So we act and we deal with our fear while we're acting. That's the human way." Taman returned to the command deck of the Soft Dawn and opened a channel to Dong-yun. "Captain, I want you to know something. When we return to Concordance space, I'm going to tell them what you did here. I'm going to tell them that humans are not what they think. That the quarantine is wrong." Dong-yun's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but determined. "I appreciate that, Ambassador. But honestly, we don't need the Concordance's approval. We just need them to stop blocking distress calls from reaching us. People need help. We're going to provide it. They can accept that or not." The human ship jumped to faster than light speed, racing toward another battle, toward people they didn't know, to save lives for no reward except knowing they had tried. And Taman finally understood what made humans dangerous. It wasn't their strength or their weapons or their Deathworld adaptations. It was their absolute refusal to accept that some people were not worth saving. The gentle inquiry hung in space like a wounded animal, its hull torn open in 3 places, atmosphere venting in frozen streams. 6 raider ships circled it, firing methodically at the life support systems. Taman watched from the command deck of the Soft Dawn, his hands gripping the console so hard his fingers hurt. The science vessel held 43 crew members, all of them slowly suffocating as their air supply dwindled. 2 Concordance peacekeeper ships had arrived an hour ago. They hung at a safe distance, broadcasting diplomatic messages to the raiders, offering to negotiate, following proper first contact protocols. The raiders ignored them. They knew the Concordance wouldn't use lethal force. It was against their core principles. written into their founding documents. The peacekeepers could only watch and negotiate while people died. The raiders are demanding a ransom, Minji reported. Technological data, weapons schematics, and safe passage. The peacekeepers are asking for time to consult with the council. How much time? Taman asked. They estimate 24 hours for proper deliberation. The science vessel had less than 8 hours of air remaining. The broken chain is approaching. Sora's voice came over the communication channel. Captain Dongyun is broadcasting on all frequencies. Taman switched to the open channel and heard the human captain's voice. Calm and clear. Raider vessels, this is Captain Dongyun of the Broken Chain. You are attacking a ship in distress. You have one chance to withdraw peacefully. Leave now and we won't pursue. Stay. And we will disable your vessels and recover your survivors. This is your only warning. One of the raider ships responded with a burst of plasma fire, aimed at the Broken Chain. The human ship rolled away from the blast with that impossible agility Taman had seen before. Warning declined, Dongyun said. All crew engage. What followed was a masterclass in human combat philosophy. The Broken Chain didn't charge in blindly. Sora had plotted an approach through a debris field from an old battle, using the wreckage as cover. The raider ships tried to track them, but the human vessel moved through obstacles that should have torn it apart. Sora's navigation skills turning the battlefield into an advantage. Hyunwoo had done something to the ship's electronic signature, making it appear in 3 different locations at once on the raiders' sensors. The raiders fired at ghosts while the real Broken Chain positioned itself perfectly. When they attacked, it was with precise brutality. Railgun rounds punched through raider shields, targeting engine systems and weapons arrays. The humans didn't aim to destroy the raider ships entirely, just to disable them. Every shot was calculated to cripple, not kill. They're giving them a chance, Minji whispered, watching the battle. Even now they're offering mercy. But the raiders didn't understand mercy. They kept fighting, kept trying to destroy the science vessel. One raider ship broke formation and made a suicide run toward the Gentle Inquiry, weapons charging for a final devastating shot. A new human appeared on the Broken Chain's hull, wearing a spacesuit and carrying a long rifle. Yoonji, the ship's security specialist. She couldn't have been more than 25 Earth years old. But she moved with absolute confidence. She fired once. The shot crossed 2,000 meters of space and hit the raider ship's weapon array exactly, causing it to overload and shut down. The ship drifted harmless. Perfect shot, Sora said over the channel, and Taman could hear the pride in her voice. The remaining raiders tried to flee, but the Broken Chain had positioned itself between them and their escape route. Dongyun broadcast again. You can surrender or we can disable your engines and you'll drift here until the peacekeepers collect you. Your choice. You have 30 seconds. 3 raider ships surrendered. The other 2 tried to fight. Hyunwoo's weapons disabled them in under a minute. Precise shots that left the ships intact but powerless. Then the humans moved to the Gentle Inquiry. The Concordance peacekeepers were still broadcasting diplomatic requests, asking the humans to stand down, explaining that this was Concordance jurisdiction. Dongyun ignored them completely. Jiwon, take a team to the science vessel, the captain ordered. Get those people breathing again. Hyunwoo, see what you can do about their life support. Sora, coordinate with the Velen ship to provide emergency supplies. Captain, one of the Concordance peacekeepers finally said, frustration clear in their voice. You are violating at least 15 protocols. You cannot simply board a Concordance vessel without authorization. Watch me, Dongyun said, and cut the channel. The humans boarded the Gentle Inquiry the same way they had boarded the Soft Dawn. No permission asked, no protocols followed. They simply cut through the damaged airlock and entered the dying ship. Taman watched through the video feeds that Minji had managed to tap into. The science vessel was a disaster. The crew, mostly scholars and researchers, huddled in the few sections that still had atmosphere. They looked terrified as the humans stormed through their ship, but Jiwon moved among them with gentle efficiency, checking vital signs, administering oxygen, treating injuries. She spoke softly to each crew member, explaining what she was doing, making sure they understood they were safe now. Hyunwoo found the life support center and began his chaotic repairs. A Concordance engineer tried to explain the proper procedure for restoring atmosphere, but Hyunwoo waved him away. I appreciate the lecture, friend, but your way takes 3 hours and you've got 20 minutes of air left. I'm going to do this my way. Stand back. He tore out damaged systems, rerouted power from non-essential systems, and jury-rigged a solution that would have horrified any concordant safety inspector. Within 15 minutes, air was flowing again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. "You're breathing," Hyunwoo said to the shocked concordance engineer. "Everything else is details." Sora coordinated the transfer of supplies from both the Soft Dawn and the Broken Chain to the science vessel. Food, water, medical supplies, repair materials. The humans gave freely, not asking for payment or gratitude. It was during this transfer that the disaster happened. One of the raider ships, damaged but not quite disabled, made a final desperate move. It fired its remaining weapon at the Gentle Inquiry. A last act of spite from a defeated enemy. Hyunwoo was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The explosion tore through the section he was working in, and the human engineer took the full force of the blast, protecting a concordance crew member who had been standing nearby. "Man down!" Sora's voice cracked with emotion over the channel. "Ji-won, we need you now." Taemin watched helplessly as Ji-won sprinted through the damaged corridors, her medical kit already open. She reached Hyunwoo and immediately began working, her hand steady despite the obvious fear in her eyes. The injured concordance crew member, a young scholar named Bora, stared at the human engineer who had saved her life. "Why did you do that? You don't even know me." Hyunwoo, conscious but clearly in pain, managed a weak smile. "Didn't really think about it. You were in danger, I could help. Pretty simple math." Ji-won worked with desperate speed using techniques that made the concordance medical staff gasp. She injected something directly into Hyunwoo's bloodstream, applied pressure to wounds that were bleeding too fast, used her own body weight to stabilize broken bones. "Don't you dare die on me," she said, her voice fierce. "You promised to teach me that card trick. I'm holding you to it." "Demanding woman," Hyunwoo muttered, but he was still smiling. Captain Dong-yun arrived, his expression carefully controlled, but Taemin could see the worry beneath it. "Status?" "He'll live," Ji-won said, not looking up from her work. "But he needs a proper medical facility. We need to get him back to the ship." The Concordance peacekeepers, who had been demanding that the humans leave, suddenly changed their tone. They offered medical assistance, access to their more advanced facilities. Dong-yun accepted, surprising Taemin. The captain had ignored their orders and protocols up until now, but when it came to his crew members' health, he set aside pride. "Thank you," he said simply. While Ji-won and the Concordance medical team worked on Hyunwoo, Dong-hyun addressed the crew of the Gentle Inquiry. Taemin listened in on the broadcast. "I know we scared you," the human captain said. "We came in fast. We didn't follow your rules, and we probably seemed like just another danger, but everyone here is alive. That was the goal, the only goal." One of the scientists, an older woman with kind eyes, stepped forward. "You saved us. The peacekeepers were negotiating following protocol, but you acted. Why?" "Because protocols are worth nothing if you're dead," Dong-yun said. "Your people value process over results. We value results over process. Both approaches have merit, but in an emergency, results matter more." "You're human," another scientist said. "From Earth. We were told your kind were dangerous, violent." "We can be," Dong-yun admitted, "but violence is a tool, not a personality trait. We use it when we have to protect people who can't protect themselves. The rest of the time, we're just people trying to do the right thing." Bora, the young scholar Hyunwoo had saved, spoke up. "Your engineer was injured protecting me. How can we repay that?" "You can't," Dong-hyun said simply, "and you don't need to. He did what any decent person should do. He saw someone in danger, and he helped. That's not heroic. That's basic humanity." The Concordance crew didn't know what to make of this. In their culture, debts were carefully tracked and repaid. The idea of helping someone with no expectation of return was foreign to them. But Taemin was beginning to understand. The humans didn't help people to earn gratitude or favors. They helped because not helping was unthinkable to them. Later, as Hyunwoo recovered in the Concordance medical bay, surrounded by technology far more advanced than what the Broken Chain carried, Taman visited him. You could have died, Taman said. For someone you didn't know, someone whose government has treated yours terribly. Hyunwoo shrugged, then winced at the movement. Yeah, but she's not her government. She's just a person who needed help. That's all that mattered in that moment. You humans, Taman said softly. You terrify me, but you also inspire me. I don't know what to do with that. Join the club, Hyunwoo said with a laugh. We terrify and inspire ourselves pretty regularly too. It's kind of our thing. As Taman left the medical bay, he made a decision. When they reached concordance space, he would speak to the council. He would tell them everything he had seen. He would argue that the quarantine was not just wrong, but cruel. These humans, these Deathworlders, had something the concordance desperately needed. They had the courage to act when action mattered most. Concordance Central Station was the largest artificial structure Taman had ever seen. A massive ring orbiting a peaceful blue star, home to millions of beings from hundreds of species. It was the heart of civilized space, the symbol of peace and cooperation that the concordance represented. It was also in chaos because of one human ship. The broken chain had escorted both the Soft Dawn and the Gentle Inquiry to the station, refusing to leave until they were certain both crews were safe. The Concordance Council had held emergency sessions for 3 days straight, trying to decide what to do about the humans who had violated their quarantine, ignored their protocols, and saved over 100 lives in the process. Taman stood in the council chambers, a vast circular room where representatives from every member species sat in careful arrangement. The air hummed with translation devices, turning hundreds of languages into coherent discussion. The humans acted without authorization, Council Speaker Dury said, her crystalline voice carrying through the chamber. She was Tarlonian, a species that valued order above all else. They entered concordance space, engaged in combat, and boarded vessels without permission. These are serious violations. They also saved 93 lives, Taman countered. He had been given special permission to address the council, using his status as a senior ambassador. Lives that would have been lost if we had followed standard protocols. Protocols exist for a reason, another council member said. This was Jae-sung, a Velen like Taman, but one who believed strongly in concordance traditions. They provide order, prevent chaos, ensure that actions are considered and measured. They also take time, Taman said. Time that people dying in space don't have. The science vessel had 8 hours of air. Our peacekeepers would have needed 48 hours to mount a proper rescue. The humans arrived in 4. Minji sat in the gallery along with the entire crew of the Gentle Inquiry. She had compiled her interviews with the human crew into a comprehensive report, one that painted a very different picture of Earth's people than the official concordance assessment. If I may speak, Boris stood up from the gallery. The young scientist still had bandages from the raider attack. I was there. I saw what happened. The human engineer, Hyunwoo, put himself between me and an explosion. He could have died. I asked him why, and he said it was simple. I needed help, and he could provide it. That's reckless behavior, Jae-sung said. Not considered. Not rational. It was brave, Bora countered. It was good. And it saved my life. How is that not rational? The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species sided with the traditional view that humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable. Others, especially those who had crew members on the rescued ships, argued for a change in policy. Captain Dong-yeon and his crew waited in an adjacent chamber, not allowed to address the council directly, but available for questions. Taman had visited them earlier, finding them remarkably calm about the situation. What will you do if they order you to leave concordance space? Taman had asked. Dong-yeon had shrugged. Leave, I guess. But we won't stop answering distress calls. If we have to sneak across the border to help people, we will. The council can make whatever laws they want. We answer to a different code. Now, as the debate raged, Taman prepared to make his proposal. He had spent days crafting it, discussing it with Minji and other progressive council members. It was a compromise, a way to bridge the gap between concordance caution and human action. Council members, he said, raising his voice above the debate, I propose we establish a new branch of concordance operations, a rapid response division, staffed by human volunteers operating under limited concordance oversight. The chamber fell silent. "Explain," Speaker Dury said. Taman took a deep breath. "There are situations where our normal protocols are too slow. Disasters, attacks, emergencies that require immediate action. We've lost lives because we prioritize proper procedure over speed. The humans have proven they can act quickly, effectively, and yes, with appropriate restraint when needed." "You want to weaponize them," Jae-sung said, his voice cold. "I want to utilize their skills," Taman corrected. "The humans don't seek conflict. They seek to help. Let them. Give them official status as emergency responders. In exchange, they agree to certain guidelines, report their actions, and coordinate with concordance authorities when time permits. This is unprecedented," another council member said. "So is having a species willing to risk their lives for strangers with no expectation of reward," Taman replied. "We should use unprecedented situations to create unprecedented solutions." Minji stood and addressed the council. "I've interviewed the human crew extensively. I've studied their history, their culture, their motivations. They're not saints and they're not monsters. They're people who evolved in a harsh environment that taught them the value of community and quick action. Every species in this council has strengths. The Tarlonians are brilliant administrators. The Velans are exceptional diplomats. The Karathi are master engineers. Why not let the humans be what they're good at? Emergency responders." The debate continued for hours. Taman argued his case, supported by testimonies from rescued crew members, data from Minji's reports, and even reluctant admissions from the peacekeepers that the human intervention had been effective. Finally, Speaker Dury called for a vote. All in favor of establishing a trial program for human rapid response teams, operating under limited concordance oversight for a period of one standard cycle. "Raise your indicators." Taman watched as lights appeared throughout the chamber. Blue for yes, red for no. The counting seemed to take forever. "The motion passes," Speaker Dury announced, "by a margin of 53 to 47. The Rapid Response Division is approved for a trial period." The chamber erupted in reactions, some species celebrating, others protesting. Taman felt relief wash over him, mixed with anxiety. This was just the beginning. They brought Captain Donghyun into the chamber to hear the decision. The human stood calmly, showing no obvious emotion as Speaker Dury explained the terms. The humans would be granted limited access to concordant space. They could respond to emergency distress calls. They would file reports after each incident and submit to review by concordance authorities. "Do you accept these terms?" Speaker Dury asked. Donghyun was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "On one condition." The council members stirred uncomfortably. They were not used to negotiating with those they were offering opportunities to. "What condition?" Speaker Dury asked. "You don't block distress calls from reaching us," Donghyun said. "I've reviewed your communication protocols. You filter emergency signals, prioritize them, sometimes delay or redirect them. I want direct access to all distress calls in regions we operate in. If someone needs help, we need to know immediately." "That would give you access to sensitive communications," Jae-sung protested. "I don't care about your sensitive communications," Donghyun said bluntly. "I care about people dying while we wait for permission to help them. Give us direct access to distress calls or we'll keep doing what we've been doing just without your approval." Taman held his breath. This was the moment where everything could fall apart. The council didn't respond well to demands. But Speaker Dury surprised him. "Agreed. You will have direct access to emergency channels. In exchange, you will coordinate your responses with our peacekeepers whenever possible, and submit to our investigation if any incident raises concerns." "Deal," Donghyun said simply. Over the following weeks, the Rapid Response Division took shape. It wasn't just the broken chain anymore. Word had spread through human space about the Concordance's new policy, and other ships volunteered. Salvage crews, explorers, former military personnel, they all followed the same code. Help when needed, ask questions later. The Concordance assigned liaisons to work with the human teams. Minji volunteered immediately, becoming the primary coordinator between Concordance authorities and the human responders. She learned their methods, their thinking, and helped translate between two very different cultures. Taman watched as the program evolved. There were challenges. Some human teams moved too aggressively. Some Concordance officials tried to apply too many restrictions. But slowly, carefully, they found a balance. The real test came 3 months into the trial program. A colony ship carrying 10,000 settlers suffered a catastrophic malfunction in deep space, far from any concordance station. The peacekeepers would need a week to mount a rescue. The colonists had days. 5 human rapid response ships were in range. They all changed course immediately, coordinating through Minji and the Concordance Emergency Network. They arrived to find the colony ship breaking apart, systems failing, people abandoning ship in emergency pods. What followed was the largest rescue operation Concordance Space had ever seen. The humans worked with brutal efficiency, pulling people from failing pods, transferring them to safety, stabilizing the colony ship long enough to evacuate everyone. They saved 9,843 lives. 157 colonists died before the humans could reach them. When the peacekeepers arrived a week later, they found the human crew still working, still searching for survivors, still refusing to give up, even when the odds seemed hopeless. The rescue was broadcast across concordant space. Millions of beings watched as these supposed Deathworlders, these dangerous humans, risked everything to save strangers. Public opinion shifted. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it was tempered by respect, by gratitude, by understanding. Taman received a message from Speaker Dury. The trial program was being made permanent. The Rapid Response Division would become an official part of Concordance operations. He shared the news with Dong-hyun over a communication channel. The human captain smiled, looking tired but satisfied. "Does this mean we're civilized now?" Dong-hyun asked with dry humor. "It means we're learning that civilization comes in many forms," Taman replied, "and that sometimes the most civilized action is to simply help when help is needed." Months later, Taman stood on an observation deck of the Concordance Central Station, watching ships come and go. Among the sleek Concordance vessels were the rougher, scarred human ships. They looked out of place, these patchwork craft among elegant designs. Minji joined him, carrying a data tablet. "Another distress call," she said. "Mining accident in the outer reaches. 3 human ships are responding, and the peacekeepers are coordinating with them." "How's Hyunwoo?" Taman asked. The engineer had fully recovered and was back with the broken chain. "He's leading the response," Minji said with a smile. "He says if anyone can get trapped miners out of a collapsed tunnel, it's a human who grew up digging in the dirt of a death world." Taman watched as the broken chain undocked from the station, its engines burning bright as it headed toward another emergency. On the hull, someone had painted words in human script and galactic common. "The Deathworlders code. We answer the call." More human ships followed, heading out into the dangerous regions of space where others feared to go. And for the first time in his long life, Taman felt hope that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was becoming a place where help would always come when it was needed. Because the Deathworlders had arrived and they weren't leaving. They would keep answering distress calls, keep saving lives, keep proving that strength and compassion weren't opposites but partners. A new alert sounded across the station's communication network. Another distress call. This one from a system experiencing a natural disaster. The Concordance peacekeepers were assembling a response team, following proper protocols. But they weren't alone anymore. 3 human ships changed course immediately, racing toward the disaster while the peacekeepers organized. By the time the official response arrived, the humans would already be there, already helping, already saving who they could. Taman smiled. The galaxy was changing, one rescue at a time, and he had been privileged to witness the beginning of it all. The moment when 2 different approaches to civilization found a way to work together. The moment when the Deathworlders became the first ones to answer when help was needed. And that, Taman thought, was the most civilized thing of all.